welcome to Beyond Baseball, powered by Blast Motion. We are here with episode 3. Can't believe that we are, now in the first month of the season is over almost. Man, it's pushing May. It feels like the season just started, but it's been insane. Caleb, what are some of your big stories to take away from the first month of April? Any cool human side stories that you've been seeing? Any performance-based stories from teams you're like, wow, not expecting that?
Yeah, well, we always talk about the player's journey. It's always one of the first questions. Tell us about your journey. And I think one of the things
Mhm.
I want to lead into were two 29-year-olds, which is very strange to say, but two 29-year-olds who have taken two different journeys in baseball and kind of just feature what they're doing. I think the interesting thing is they're 29. They're not yet 30. I think we know how age works. And I think the big thing here is we always talk about the life expectancy of a major leaguer. And most of these players are going to either be drafted at 18. I know some are signed before them, but that's not what I'm talking about because they're the outliers. And then some are drafted at 22, 23, 24. And if you put the 5 to 6 year, it's really 5.6 years average to that, it really brings you to 29. And a lot of players at 29, depending on where they are in the minor league baseball level system and all that kind of stuff, they're either dismissed, told they're released and have to go pick up somewhere else. So I think featuring these two at this point in their careers is a very interesting story. So I'll introduce them if that's cool. One of them is Jason Vossler. He's now a third baseman playing first base a little bit too with the Cincinnati Reds. But Jason was never a high prospect in any means. He definitely had a few cups of coffee, maybe even a handful of cups of coffee. But he played college baseball at Northeastern, drafted in the 16th round in the 2014 draft. So just give that some perspective. It wasn't until 2021 that he made his debut. So it's 7 years later. And at that point, you're really an organizational guy, some roster depth. We talk about this all the time. But now he's 29 and he's really finding his own. Do I know if he's going to stick as an everyday player when, Votto comes back or the Reds, choose to go a different direction? I'm not really sure. But to see this early success in the first month of baseball is a beautiful thing. And I think it's really cool because we've seen him, kind of bounce around in terms of positions and all that kind of stuff. But in 2023, 9 years after being drafted, he's finding himself some comfort at the plate. And it's really, an interesting story for a 29-year-old. The other one was, and honestly, I've never heard of this guy before. A Forbes Sports Money, I think it was Forbes Sports Money article came out. So I'm just kind of giving some detail into the background of me following these players. Is Jesse Schultens. It looks like he made his debut this year. Really, in the last couple of weeks, he made his debut after being called up from AAA. And the crazy thing is that he wasn't really sure where his career was going. It sounds a lot like the people we talk to, hearing about all their journeys and understanding that not only did he play for the minor leagues and went through his minor league contract, but then he had to deal with COVID and then coming out of there. So you have a lot of times and a lot of ups and downs of where you're like, what is going to happen to my career? Am I done playing baseball? We talk about this all the time with what's my backup plan? What am I going to do
Mhm.
next? Who am I? Am I more than a baseball player? And now we hear that this guy has kind of surpassed all of those worries, those questions, and now he is making his debut with the Chicago White Sox. So Jason Vossler, 29, and Jesse Schultens at 29 years old.
Yeah, I mean the other guy I'll mention too is Hobie Harris with the Washington Nationals. Guy posted a 0 ERA in spring training. Another reliever, 29 years old, spent 8 years just grinding through the minor leagues, and it's kind of the same story that you touch on. Has an absolutely disgusting splitter plus pitch there, and he just found his way onto the Nationals, made a team. Of course, Nationals probably aren't going to be good this year, but I mean, just think about that. You spend 8 years, all you know is minor league bus trips, and then all of a sudden you're making a major league debut. And you talk about the age thing. It just reminds me. I tweeted out something early in the season. Logan Porter for the Kansas City Royals in his first 2 games hit 3 home runs in 9 at bats, and he's 27 years old. And now he's hit 4 home runs, I think, too. But I tweeted it out like, he's a guy you should watch because he's done throughout his minor league career is hit. He just kind of has some questions about where he'll play positionally. But someone commented, I was like, isn't he 30? And I was like, okay, yeah, he's not 30. He's 27 for sure. He's not like a young prospect, but the mindset is like once these guys are over 25, like he shouldn't be a prospect anymore, it seems. And he's 27 years old. Of course, he's blocked in multiple ways in making the Kansas City Royals roster, but everybody kind of like turns their head because they think they see his age and they're just like, nah, he has no chance. So he's a guy who's going to keep grinding probably. It'll probably take a trade for him to finally get that shot in the major leagues. But I mean, those stories are just incredible, and there's just things you don't expect.
Right. I think they bring a lot of other things to the table too. They have that maturity because they've been through so much, like kind of been like stuck in this thing that they've always been trying to achieve. So when they're up in the league and they're talking to these other players, I use Jason Vosso as an example. He's going to be talking to a ton of Reds prospects. They have one of the stacked farm systems, and they're going to have guys who are either coming up from September or they were at spring training that he was talking to. They give that kind of perspective. And the other thing is when you start to, I guess, turn at 29 to 30, 31, 32, and you're still playing, but you know that these are like your lasting years, you can start to think about, hey, I already got that out of my way. I got my debut. I got my
Yeah.
home runs. I got my hot streak. My ERA was 0, now it's 1, like whatever it may be. And you got that out of your way, so you can start thinking about what's next because you do know that the clock has been ticking for a while now. And I think when you start to think about that, we always talk about it's a process, it's not a singular event. That process has already started with these guys. And I think there's definitely some research that says maybe that process started a little too soon for them. And
Yeah.
that whole stress, mental health, angst that is on their backs or in their head is away. And that's why they're clear and they're able to perform.
Yeah, I just thought of another interesting guy too. Of course, I know the Royals just because it's the team I follow, but Jorge Bonifacio made his major league debut in 2017. Got traded around. He made the major league debut with the Kansas City Royals. He signed a minor league deal this year with the Royals, and the Royals are just so stacked with outfield prospects that he's playing Double A at 29. And so it's just like you see these guys that just want that shot or want that opportunity again once they get that taste of the big leagues. And Bonifacio is grinding it out. He's
Yeah,
willing to take a Double A assignment at 29 years old in order to hopes that he can get back to the major leagues.
right. I think this even goes back to the World Baseball Classic. Some of these guys want to just keep playing to stay in shape, to play
Yeah.
for their country, or when it's time to go back home and play. We'll see that. And I think, like what you're saying, there's some guys who just Julio Franco can't get out of their system, and what their fabric is baseball. So this is in their fabric, and they're going to continue to do it. That's a beautiful thing, because the crowd who says that baseball is not a lifelong sport, these people are defying exactly that.
Yeah, and you think about it too, like injuries play a role, and I think that kind of segues into our interview with Trevor Hildenberger, a right-handed pitcher with the San Francisco Giants. He came and made his major league debut, absolutely dominated, and now he's had some setbacks because of injuries and just trying to stay healthy and be on the field. I mean, so he's going to be in AAA, I think, this year. So, like for guys like that, I mean, there's this will to like never quit, right? I think he talked about that even when he was in college. He just never gave up. He was trying everything he could to like improve his game. And that's the biggest thing that really stuck out to me in that interview. But Caleb, was there anything that you stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean, he was really an interesting person to talk to for the sole purpose of he really understands what he likes away from baseball and
Yeah,
how he knows exactly when to disconnect. We always talk about how hard it is to disconnect and how hard it is to find that space or that that time to just pull back and do what you want to do. But he was talking about how much he loves movies, and he got into like F1 and all these kind of interesting things that kind of peel back who he is as a person. We've started to realize that when these players become fathers, it changes a lot of who they are too. And I think that his identity has always been someone who's evolving. But the coolest part to me that stuck out is all of what I just mentioned, and this is why I'm saying this because I don't want to give anything away, where it started from, where it originated from, and it was really that journey that got him to playing Major League Baseball. I mean, he has played college, he's played high school. He told us all about that story, and over this course of the time, he's really learned who he is, and he's evolved as a person.
yeah. And speaking of trying to improve your game and develop and get better, just our sponsor, Blast Motion. Blast Baseball is trusted by more MLB and college teams than any other hitting solution. The Blast sensor attaches to the knob of any bat, providing real time feedback with every swing. Go to blastmotion.com and enter the code live at checkout to save $10. And now we'll get you to that interview with Trevor Hildenberger. Welcome to another awesome interview for Beyond Baseball, powered by Prospects Live. We have an incredible guest here today, Trevor Hildenberger, pitcher with the San Francisco Giants, drafted in the 2014 MLB Draft by the Minnesota Twins and made his major league debut in 2017. Trevor, we're excited to have you. How are you doing today?
Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me on. I'm doing well. I'm fighting off a little sickness. Luckily, it's not COVID. I've taken multiple tests. They're all negative. But if I cough during the recording, please excuse me.
Yeah, I got COVID at the New Year, so I definitely feel that. It has been a nice little, always fun to power through the colds.
Yeah.
So the first question we always ask to our guests is we really want for the viewers to get to know who you are. So give us a little bit of background on yourself and kind of how you made your journey to the pros in Major League Baseball and have the opportunity to make your Major League debut as well.
Sure. I grew up in San Jose, California. Pretty much a baseball nut my entire life. I grew up going to Candlestick, going to the San Jose Giants games. Really, my favorite player was Barry Bonds. Really into the Giants. I played baseball at Archbishop Mitty in high school. I was good enough to get a scholarship to play D1 at the University of California, Berkeley. So I played at Cal. But when I got there, I really hit struggles for the first time in my career. I think I didn't take weightlifting or diet serious. I had a hard time managing my priorities in terms of like time management and classes and a social life. So I really struggled my first few years of college baseball. I think when you're 18 and you're competing against like 22-year-olds, that was a big change for me. And, in high school, when you're good, and everybody knows it, and you're the best player on your team or whatever. And then you get to college and everybody in college was the best player on their high school team. And now they're all competing for the same job. So college was a big wake-up call in terms of baseball for my career. My sophomore year, I redshirted not because I was hurt or anything, but because we were just stacked. That fall in September of my sophomore year, we ended up getting our program cut because of money issues. Basically, the university didn't have enough money to keep all programs going, so they cut baseball and rugby and women's field hockey, I think women's lacrosse, gymnastics, a couple other sports. So while other guys were looking for schools to transfer to or, getting kind of recruited in the middle of college, excuse me, I wasn't, because I'd only pitched 2 innings my freshman year, and I hadn't pitched, obviously sophomore year hadn't started yet, so I hadn't pitched, and I wasn't getting recruited anywhere. So I was going to stay at Cal, get my degree, and kind of hang up my cleats. And it was painful, but I had kind of come to terms with baseball being out of my life. And that year we ended up being really good. We went to the College World Series. Our program got reinstated due to a ton of donors and fundraising. We were able to raise enough money to save the program. So I got to stay at Cal and keep playing baseball, but I got to watch my teammates and my best friends, everyone you wake up at 6 a.m. with, and you go to conditioning and weight training and you live with and you go to class with, and all my best friends celebrate and dogpile and, everything that you work towards in college baseball, which is going to Omaha, they did that without me, and I watched from the couch, and that stung. And at the time I swore to myself that I was going to do everything in my power to contribute next time we had success. So that's when I started to take weightlifting and diet and mobility and stuff like that a little bit more seriously. My third year, I pitched more, but not a lot. I think I pitched up 6, down 6 kind of guy, but kind of mopped up some games. And then at the end of my third year, I was waiting to throw a bullpen. The guy ahead of me had the wrong practice jersey on, and my pitching coach said, "Yo, you're a knucklehead. Like, we give you 3 practice jerseys a year. Like, how do you lose them all? And why are you wearing number 37? He's like, "When I see 37, I picture a big power corner outfielder." I said, "Oh, that's interesting. You have certain preconceptions about numbers, jersey numbers. What do you think of when you see 26, which was my number?" he said, "Oh, there was a sidearmer from UCLA who was 26, a pitcher, and actually another sidearmer from Washington. He also was 26. Have you ever thrown that way?" And I said, "No." He's like, "All right, step up right now. Let's try it out." And so that bullpen, I threw sidearm for the first time, and it didn't hurt. It didn't feel bad. It just felt like I was messing around, flipping double plays at second base. And I was around the strike zone, and I was probably 82 to 84, maybe 85, which is slow even for college baseball. But he said, go off to summer ball, take it seriously. It's not a gimmick. It's not a trick. It's, watch video of Joe Smith and Darren O'Day and Dan Quisenberry and all these sidearmers and see if you can find something that's comfortable to you. Because I didn't know how low to go in terms of like, do I want to be Chad Bradford? Did I want to be Joe Smith, who's kind of parallel to the ground? So, figure out all those growing pains of a new arm slot.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can throw strikes this way, like just the natural movement you get from throwing sidearm, you will pitch more. I promise. So I thought, all right, let's do this. So I went to Bend, Oregon to play in the West Coast League for the Bend Elks. I lifted 6 days a week. I put on about 15 pounds. And my velo went from like 82, 84 to like 86, 88, which got me a lot of innings. And I was happy with that. I was really happy to compete at the Pac-12 level. And that was my 4th year. I pitched a lot. I didn't pitch particularly well, but I pitched a lot. And then my scholarship was up and my 4th year was done. I didn't get drafted or anything. And I was at peace with that. I'd finished my degree. I just needed a couple classes in the summer and my college was done. I was going to go find a job somewhere else. I didn't have anything lined up, but I was going to, baseball was out of my life for the second time. And then an incoming freshman unexpectedly signed. Scholarship money freed up. I was invited back for a 5th year. Kind of with that monkey off my back, I refined my stuff. I found a slider that worked for me. My changeup was a little bit more consistent, and I had 3 pitches I could throw for strikes. And my velo jumped again to about 88, 91. So I had a good 5th year, and then the Twins drafted me in 2014, like you mentioned. I had 3 years in the minor leagues. I pitched really, really well. Just very fortunate to have good coaches and good defenses behind me because I got a lot of ground balls. But really my changeup was my biggest weapon. I threw that a ton. And like you said, got to the big leagues at June 23rd, 2017.
Yeah, that's incredible. I have so many questions related to your journey.
Yeah, sorry that was a long story.
No, not at all. That was awesome. I guess the first thing that kind of came to my mind, because we talk about a lot of the guys we interview too in this podcast, they're retired and they're trying to figure out that transition away from baseball and haven't even thought about it. The fact that you had to think about it in college before you even had that opportunity to chase, to even get close to your dream of making it to the big leagues. Kind of take us through that moment a little bit and kind of how you powered through the adversity of all right, my baseball career really done right now. What kept you going and kind of kept you off the path of walking away from baseball?
Well, it was painful, truly.
Yeah.
I felt like my career ended on a failure, that I didn't pitch well my 2 innings my freshman year, and I didn't pitch at all my sophomore year. And the program was cut, and I felt like baseball was being taken away from me. And I could have gone to a JC and kept playing. I could have gone to West Valley, which is in San Jose or Santa Clara. I could have gone and really kept playing baseball as long as I could, but I felt like the opportunity I had to graduate from Cal was really more valuable. So I just made the decision to stay put and to finish my degree at Cal. And all my friends were going to leave. We'd play Oregon on a weekend and they would be like, all right, I got to go on this recruiting trip before our game on Saturday. The coach is touring me around the campus. And I was jealous, very happy for them, but I was jealous. I wanted to be, courted again. I wanted to be continuing my baseball career somewhere else, excited for the future. And I wasn't excited for the future. I was dreading it. I was dreading baseball being out of my life. So I was trying to savor that year a lot. But ultimately I felt like big picture, I wasn't on any path to being in the big leagues. I didn't see baseball as a career at that point. So I just thought, all right, let's make a sensible decision. Let's get a degree from Cal, which I thought would lead to a good, I don't know, office job or something. So that's at that point, that's the decision I made. And then at the end of my 4th year when my scholarship was up, I was totally at peace. I wasn't afraid of baseball being out of my life. I was totally at peace with it, happy. I felt like I had success at the D1 level. I bought my cap and gown and I walked and I celebrated graduating. And then when the phone call came in from my coach, Mike New, who was the same coach that helped me switch sidearm, I was at sushi with my girlfriend, then girlfriend, now wife, and her sister. And I thought, you guys think I should go back to school for another year? Like, be a 5th year, be a 23-year-old in college. And I was lucky, all my years previous at Cal, we had a 5th year guy and he was awesome. He was a good leader. He was a good team guy. And I thought, yeah, I could step into that role and I could play baseball. Like, why not play baseball for as long as I can till they rip the jersey off my back? So when I got that opportunity, I thought, yeah, I could postpone real life one more year and just see how it goes playing baseball for, a 5th year at Cal. And luckily I had a good year. So I think that honestly helped me in the minor leagues because I wasn't afraid of being released. I wasn't afraid of failure. And I knew that when baseball was over, I was going to be fine.
Yeah, and I love that. I want to turn it over, just say something, and then I'll turn over to Caleb for a question. But it's like it's almost like you were forced to leave the game just because the program was being cut. And I think a lot of players go through that as well. It's like it's never usually their choice to leave, but a lot of times they feel like they're forced out.
Yeah, you have to be very, very lucky and very successful to have the choice of retirement, right?
Yeah.
Usually it's you're not good enough anymore.
Yeah.
Or you're hurt and you physically can't do that anymore. And so to be able to have the choice, like I'm walking away on my terms, that's a rare thing, and it should be celebrated. Yeah. It should be,
It's very interesting, especially coinciding with what Jared's question was. Listening to your story, that there's a lot of looking back, right, and saying, I lack time management skills. I need to do better in the weight room. I need to do better with my diet, right? I don't know if you thought that at the time, but I'm curious with these peaks and valleys that you went through and everything, how you identified, like what would you have called yourself at that time? Would you have said, I'm a baseball player, I'm a college student? How much of it, and I'm not saying that you have an ego, but everybody does have some form of an ego. How much of it is ego there? Because, being able to say, I need to work on these things and then going to work on them is a different story. And then someone saying you profile as a sidearmer because of a number or something like that. And then you saying, I'm going to check my ego and I'm going to go after this thing rather than I just crushed it in high school. Why do I have to listen to you? So I'm curious, just over these peaks and valleys that you just kind of walked us through, how you identified as a person. And then did that shift when you said, I'm going to go get my degree before you went back?
Yeah, that's a really good question and beautifully framed. I think, no, at the time I didn't identify that my problems on the baseball field were stemming from time management issues or priority issues or not taking my diet or sleep or social life was taking over, everything away from the field. I just thought, okay, I need to work on my cutter. My cutter's not good enough and I need to throw my cutter, and I don't throw hard enough to have margin for error over the middle of the plate. I really have to be pinpoint command. I have to find a changeup that's consistent that I could just at least just show me and throw for a strike. And I didn't realize that, drinking and not getting enough sleep, eating Noah bagels and Chipotle every day wasn't fueling my body properly. And the stress from, I identified as a baseball player first rather than a student. And I felt like I got into Cal because of my baseball abilities, not that I belonged there intellectually. And it took me a couple years to realize that I did belong there intellectually. I felt like I was as smart as the other people who got in on pure grades or merit or any other reason. And I just thought I was like a dumb jock who was good at baseball, and I was going to My dream was, my vision when I entered college was like 3 years, first round pick, win the Cy Young at 22, World Series champion at 24, surefire Hall of Famer at 25. And obviously it's not going to happen, but we all have dreams at 18. So it took me until we went to Omaha and I had that tough sophomore year to realize that my ego was gone. I felt like a failure. And when I pledged to myself that I was going to do everything I can, I had the support of my family and my girlfriend at the time to say, you can do this. Like, you can get better. You're allowed to get better. You can get better at school. You can get better at baseball. You just have to change your priorities and work for it. And I think the fact that I got results through that changed my life, because now I understand that dedication and commitment can actually turn in results, because I felt like I was working hard my freshman year and I had no results. I felt like I was working hard my sophomore year and I got no results. And it was really a life change and a perspective change that allowed me to finally get results.
Yeah, just going off of that, I think it's really interesting because everything you've detailed up to this point has really prepared you for whenever that transition out of baseball happens. So you talk about having the jersey ripped off your back. You talk about dealing and coping with failure. Usually, especially for Jared and I going through this process, we always hear from hitters who say, failure is just part of the game. And pitching, it's not as much. I mean, failure is part of the game, but it's not as much hearing them say that because, like you were saying, you crush it in high school, you go there and you kind of had the same success. But you not only had failure like on the field, but you had it off because you were dealing with all these things that you had to kind of cope with and deal with. And I don't want to call this phrase because it's always this negative connotation, but it's a lot of growing up to do at a point where you should be crushing it or excelling or at least enjoying life in college.
Yeah, I think, there was like the cycle of success in high school, and then I had a cycle of failure in college, and then I had a cycle of success in professional baseball. And then I've had a couple years where I was battling failure and kind of bouncing around from different team to team and injuries and stuff. And I'm hoping for one more cycle of success before I transition out.
Well, let me ask you this. In the role that you're in now, and I'm not really saying it as a pitcher, but how do you help players who are coming up? Because you had, quite the craziness in terms of your career. And a lot of guys struggle in the minors because people are tinkering with how they're throwing, right? How their fundamentals are, their mechanics, whatever that may be, even their pitches. How are you helping players now? Because you talked about that mentor role in college, but you could have that role right now.
Yeah, I think I was in rehab all of last year, and a lot of the guys in rehab, I was 31, I'm 32 now. A lot of those guys are 99.9% were younger than me and were drafted in the last 3 years. And if they're hitting challenges for the first time in their career, because they kicked butt in high school and they kicked butt in college and then they got drafted, and now it's like, oh, everybody's nasty and I have to compete with 150 guys instead of 5. I just remind them that there's not one path to the big leagues. There's not one straight path. You have to hit all these nodules to get to where you want to go. There are non-drafted free agents who are in the big leagues. There are guys from JC. There are guys who were the number 1 pick and cruised through the minor leagues. That's how many number 1 picks have cruised through the minor leagues? 15, maybe total. And there's thousands of guys in the minor league, 5,000 guys a year in the minor leagues. So you have to realize that failure is going to happen, and it's inevitable, especially for hitters, but pitchers too. You have to realize, there are going to be times where you give up runs in one outing, you give up runs in the second outing, you give up runs in the third outing, and you have to figure out whether it's on your end, whether it's part of the game, you made a mistake, or you made a perfect pitch to the perfect location and the perfect setup, perfect movement, perfect velo, and the guy just got a hit. That's baseball. Or is it something you need to change? It's very frustrating when you feel like you have a great outing. There's 2 outs, nobody on, 2 strikes on a guy. You let him off the hook, you walk him. That guy ends up coming around to score after you get taken out. And now your great outing turns into a terrible one and you're frustrated. Then you get optioned down then you have to, and they say, you need to work on finishing hitters, even though you have a 17K per 9 in AAA. And you're like, I'm incredibly frustrated because I'm one pitch away from sticking where I want to stick. And that's what's tough about baseball, is that you have to get over your ego. You have to get over criticism. You have to get over actual failure and just compete. And I think that having the mindset of competing against the guy in the box, or if you're in the box, competing against the guy on the mound, and put in the work. And if the results come, the results come. If they don't, then they don't.
Yeah, I love that mindset, and I kind of want to draw on a couple themes from what you said there, but also to Caleb talking about kind of the peaks and valleys that you had to go through. I mean, it's obvious when those moments of failure happen that you just didn't quit and give up. You use those as kind of lessons to learn and help you kind of get to that next level that you needed to get in order to make your major league debut. And one of the questions I always like to ask guys, especially ones who've made their major league debut, take us into that moment. What was that like for you? Because I have to imagine all the adversity that you had to go through to get to that level and just be on that major league mound. Like, I can't imagine the feelings that overcame you, but just kind of take us into what that was like.
Yeah. I mean, it's, the amount of moments in life that you realize, wow, this is a big moment, or I'm going to remember this forever. To have that going into the moment, you know what I mean? Where like, that you're going to remember this for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes things just happen to you, or things happen in life, and you end up remembering them 10, 20 years down the road. But this was like, you're at the stadium early, you meet the manager, you meet the team, and then you're doing your normal preparations in game. You just watch the scoreboard and you're like, is 5-0 a big enough lead for a rookie? Do they trust a rookie with a shutout? Do they trust a rookie with 5-run lead? We're playing a division rival. It was in Cleveland. I debuted with Minnesota, and they were in I guess it was pre-All-Star break, so it's tough to say pennant race, but they were at the top 2 teams in the division. And I had just came from Rochester the night before. I got about 1 hour of sleep. I was not rested. I was just too excited. And what was nice was that my parents came, my girlfriend, my sister, my brother-in-law, all flew out, and my parents were actually in Rochester when I got told. So I got to tell them face to face, which was nice. And then in Cleveland, the bullpens are like double tiered out in right center.
Yeah.
And so I remember the security guy being like, those stairs are metal, like, be careful, don't roll your ankle. I was like, okay, great. I'll just be super careful going into the game. And then I got out to the mound, and the catcher, Jason Castro, told me to look up. Everyone tells you not to look up because the stadium's massive and the lights are massive and you get intimidated by how many people there. And Castro was like, look up, soak this in. And immediately I went and looked around the stadium and kind of took a deep breath and said, this is the same game. Played 60 feet, 6 inches. I'm facing Roberto Perez, who didn't intimidate me. And I said, I can get this guy out. And so I remember the first pitch, I threw it right down the middle, and he took it for strike 1. And I thought, okay, like, big leaguers are the same as AAA hitters. They're just more consistent, or they have one more tool maybe, but they're really the same guys. And if you execute your pitch, they miss mistakes just like everybody else. And that if you execute your pitches to your spot, they're outs. You can get them out. They're not like Miguel Cabrera in 2012. Like, not every hitter is just, the perfect hitter. So I was able to get through that with no runs. And I don't really remember anything after that, but I remember every single pitch that I threw that inning.
Yeah, I can imagine there's always that little bit of blackout at sometimes, just kind of taking that moment.
Yeah, it was the end of the game. I pitched the 9th, so it finished the game. I got to do the high five line, and then I had a couple interviews. I have no idea what I said. And then you make a little speech in the clubhouse every time you debut. They give you a ball, and they gave me a ball for my first strikeout, and I don't remember what I said, but
nice.
Yeah, I remember everything about being on the field. I remember.
Yeah. I'll turn it over to Caleb for one more question before we dive into the last one here.
Yeah, so it's kind of a two-part question, which I'm known for these, but one of the things that has stood out to me over this, interview and kind of going through your story is you have what is almost like a perfect reliever pitcher mentality, which is like getting the next batter out.
Mhm.
And everything that you kind of encountered, the ups, the downs, really just the looking internally and saying like, what can I do better? Where can I improve? What do I have to do? Is a lot like what you just said with your debut story, right? Like you're walking through this path of like, I got here, now I'm here, now what's next? But I'm kind of curious, what keeps you grounded off the field? Like you talked about, you're married, you had sushi, so obviously you like to eat because we talked about you going from Chipotle to sushi, so you've obviously improved your palate there. But what
Yes.
off-field interests do you have that keep you grounded for when you do have a bad outing, or when you don't get a play, or you don't get the stretch that you wish you had as a reliever?
So I studied film and media in college. So in college, I really liked watching movies with like a critical eye and then writing about them. And those tools have been dulled over the years, but I definitely still enjoy um, watching movies and talking about them with my friends in term if like the themes and the motifs and the shots and everything the craft that goes into filmmaking. So that's a nice escape. But recently, within the last 2 years, 3 years, I've really gotten into Formula One. So anytime that I want to get away from baseball, I just pour myself into a different sport or a different driver in Formula One. Um, and then now that I have two kids, my son is 2 months old, my daughter's 2.5 years old. Yeah, anytime I come home, I just talk to them. If FaceTime them if I'm not in the same city, but if I'm in the same city, I just spend time with my family. It's so easy to realize how little baseball matters when you have a family like
Yeah.
that and you have a support system. Because when you're alone in a hotel in Bowling Green,
Yeah.
Kentucky, you spiral in terms of like you go home, you try to sleep, and you're like, oh, I hung that change up. God damn, if I didn't hang that change, I just bury that change up and like I'm golden. And you kind of just dissect every little thing, and maybe you magnify things that shouldn't be magnified.
Yeah,
Um,
well, a few follow-ups there. One is
sure.
John Axford. So he was a big, movie buff and would always tweet.
Yeah.
I think he would tweet his picks for all the awards. I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
something that you might be able to do, especially when you're not sleeping. Which was the other follow up I had is I have a soon to be 4-year-old and a 5-month old, and I probably am
Congratulations.
on an hour and 20 minutes sleep. So me and Jared were talking about that before. It's last night was not a fun night, and so it's not going to get better for you, Trevor. But
Uh,
the Formula One thing, was that the Netflix channel that turned you on to
yeah.
that?
I'm not
Yeah, I
ashamed to
figured.
say that I got into Formula
I mean,
One
a lot of
via,
people did.
yeah, Drive to Survive. And then 2021 was my first year watching the races live, like waking up, setting alarms, watching the races live. And then I
It's funny.
fell in true love with it. And now I'm like, all right, I'm in
Obsessed.
at 4 a.m. I got donuts, DoorDash like scheduled. I'll see you guys down there whenever you get up at 8.
You gotta have a treat yourself day. You can go right into the
Yeah. And it's Sunday morning.
donut.
So like I love it because on the West Coast, at least, it's very early in the Sunday morning. Like there's nothing else going on. There's no baseball. I'll always be able to watch almost all the races.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, it's awesome to see you develop those passions outside of the game because it really gives you an outlet to just kind of get away. And it's
Yeah.
because, like you said, when you were in those hotels in Bowling Green or whatever city that you were in, you're just thinking about every single pitch over and over again, trying to
Yeah.
dissect what you did wrong and what you did right.
And you feel like your life and your career rides on every outing when
Yeah.
you're a fifth round or a fifth year senior draft pick to sign for $1,000. You feel very disposable. Minor leagues make you feel very disposable, and you feel like
Yeah.
your entire career rides on every outing. So a bad outing, you can't follow it up with another bad outing because then I'm doomed. And just being able to come home to someone who understands and who loves you, like my wife, I'm extremely fortunate. But she does
Yeah.
a very good job of getting my head out of baseball. And I also like cooking and baking. I should say that. I love
Nice.
baking. So making some fresh focaccia bread sounds like a good outlet from baseball.
What's your favorite thing to cook? It sounds like the bread's favorite thing to bake.
Um, that's a really good question. Probably pasta, like a pasta
Nice.
sauce that takes a couple hours.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just kind of want to transition. This has been an awesome interview. You've touched on a lot of this that kind of leads into the last question as well. We want this to be an awesome episode for fans to really enjoy the human side, but we also want to find a way to help future minor leaguers and they try to figure out their transition and finding themselves outside of the game. So again, like I said, you touched on a little bit of this throughout the entire interview, but what would be that one piece of advice you have for future athletes as they try to find their identity outside of baseball, try to while trying to make the path of chasing their dream at the same time?
I sort of touched on it earlier. The one piece of advice, the one line that I tell guys is that there's no straight path to the big leagues. It's a very windy road. And mine is an example of that, but there are guys, excuse me, who have windier roads, who go out of baseball, go to indie ball for a year, and then come back. And that it is going to sound harsh, but it's something that I told myself to get over bad outings, was that nobody cares. Nobody cares that you gave up 2 runs against the El Paso Chihuahuas tonight, June 23rd. I promise you that nobody cares. It's only you, and you can put as much importance on that as you want. But I promise you that in 5 years, you're not going to remember that outing. So just move on to the next one. Trust your stuff. Trust yourself. Know that you're there for a reason. That if you weren't good, no matter what level you're at, if you weren't good enough, you wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
So you are there for a reason. You are good enough. Go out, play baseball like you've played baseball. Because in order to play baseball professionally, you have to be doing it your whole life. It's not something you take an intro class in college 101 and then you get an internship and then you start doing it professionally. It's not like any other job. It's very unique. So if you're playing at a high level, you belong there.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome thing to end
That's
on.
great.
And we interviewed Brewer Hicklin once, and he always talked about, he's like, what made me realize that no one cares is that at the end of the day, no matter what you do on the field, the people who still love you as soon as you go home.
Absolutely.
Well, Trevor, this has been incredible. We can't thank you enough for joining us. This is such an amazing interview. There's going to be a lot of lessons learned here for athletes, and it's just incredible to hear your human side story and how you've developed your passions outside of the game.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. This is actually one of my favorite interviews I've ever done.
That's awesome.
You guys asked thought-provoking and serious, but very good questions in terms of how you approach the game and how you approach the people who play the game. This was lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. And we're wishing you nothing but success in 2023. And we'll be definitely watching.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Trevor.